from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning and happy Tuesday, folks. April 5th, 2021, Security Gang. We've got a busy show today. I'm happy to report I've finally acquired an espresso machine for my office. Yes, in the studio, I've got multiples, right? Those that have been in the studio, like Mr. James McQuiggan and many others, know that I am well equipped in the studio. However, in my travels and in my times away, it has been a nightmare to not find a good espresso. And being in Texas, there's a lot of great things in Texas, but coffee shops that know how to make espressos just don't really exist. So I'm issuing a Dallas, Texas challenge. Find me a good coffee shop that knows how to make a real good espresso, and then maybe my opinion will change. Until then, Dallas, Texas is just a sub-market for coffee. Really, like just, it is what it is. All right, folks, we've got a really busy show today, talking about Hydra, talking about Spring4Shell and the patch there, China and Mailchimp as well, with our leading story today. So before we do that, a big shout out to KnowBe4 for their support of our program. You can find out more about KnowBe4 in the show notes. Now, so I don't have a clear cup today, but I've got a beautiful espresso in here. I don't want to tilt it too much, have it spill, but it's a lovely, beautiful, brand new Nespresso machine that I got yesterday. And it makes just the most delicious of beverages, including my beautiful double espresso that I'm drinking today. It's a Tokyo blend out of a sample pack I got yesterday. And can't wait to try it, folks. Coffee cup cheers. You can tell I'm chipper when I have my espresso. So let's get into today's show, folks. So Mailchimp has announced yesterday that a criminal breached its internal tools and managed to gain access to 319 Mailchimp accounts for companies in the crypto and finance industries. Of the 319 accounts accessed, the criminal exported audience data from 102 of the organization. Siobhan Smith, the CISO over at Mailchimp, told the Record in a statement that they became aware of a malicious actor accessing one of their internal tools used by customer-facing teams for customer support and account administration. The incident was propagated by an external actor who conducted a successful social engineering attack on Mailchimp employees, resulting in employee credentials being compromised. They acted swiftly to address the situation by terminating access for the compromised employee accounts and took steps to prevent additional employees from being affected. Noting they've hired an outside forensic counsel to examine the findings. Our findings show that this was a targeted incident focused on users in industries related to crypto and finance, all of whom have been notified. They've also determined that some account API keys pose a potential vulnerabilities and disabled those API keys as well. On Sunday morning, popular cryptocurrency wallet company Trezor took to Twitter to say that some of its services were compromised through the Mailchimp incident. And so, again, supply chain attack targeting Mailchimp, one of the largest email providers probably on the planet. The company talks about urging two-factor authentication and other security issues, SSO, a ton of things that unfortunately took place here that you can point out to either bad hygiene, irresponsibility, but this again goes to the whole thing of what data do you have and then how do you defend it? And this is one where Mailchimp internally had, obviously they're not using two-factor authentication because a basic social engineering got someone in. So, while you're urging your customers to do MFA, did you use MFA? And were you using MFA? Otherwise, how was this attack successful? Or were you using an SMS and there was, some SIM swap there in the place? Either way, get Roger Grimes' book, Hacking MFA, and learn how to properly deploy it within your environment. VMware has now launched a patch for Spring4Shell RCE flaw across multiple products. So VMware, which actually owns the Spring, which is the Java platform that Spring4Shell is, where this vulnerability exists, has security updates for the critical remote code execution vulnerability, which impacts its cloud computing and virtualization products. The list of VMware products that are affected by Spring4Shell is available in an advisory from the company. You can find the link in our show notes as well. Spring4Shell, which has been tracked as CV 2022-229-65, is a remote code execution vulnerability with a 9.8 CVSS score. There is now impact and remediation. So the Spring Framework 5.3.18 and Spring Framework 5.2.20, Spring Boot 2.5.12, and Spring Boot 2.6.6 soon to be released have all been updated. Also, the Tanzu application for VMs, Tanzu Operations Manager, Kubernetes, Grid Integrated Edition have all been updated as well. Listen, VMware powers 80-90% of all cloud computing in the planet. Get your stuff patched, get it patched now. Otherwise, you're really putting yourself out there. CISA is also warning of active exploitation of the critical Spring4Shell vulnerability. So adding to the fact that we're already seeing a bunch of stuff take place around the Spring4Shell, CISA has now come out and said that they're seeing active exploitation of it through Russian and Chinese threat actors. Akamai and Palo Alto have both spotted activities, looking activity scanning for this specific vulnerability. Please, 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 I cannot stress this enough. This is a critical vulnerability that needs to be patched right away. Please make sure you do so now. Otherwise, you stand to be in that class of organizations that couldn't get this deployed. See, there's a difference between patch deployment of a standard kind of patch process, and then this is the type of 0-day. And for some of you, what I'm saying is very basic. For some of you, this might be the thing that you hear for the first time, but some patches require greater attention, and it does require to scream, the sky could fall from this. And the sky could fall from this. That's just the honest to God truth, right? Spring is the most popular platform for Java development today. And Java, while dead in some cases, is still very much alive through Spring. And you've got to get this stuff addressed. What we're seeing with Mailchimp just a minute ago, and with Spring4Shell, with Log4j, with so much more, these supply chain attacks are getting more sophisticated, and they're becoming more widespread. Where it used to be I compromise you and your customers, I now compromise Mailchimp and 102 of their customers, where I've actually exported data, but I've impacted 319 customers of Mailchimp, where you can imagine now that every single CISO, myself included, is going to look at your email marketing firm and go, all right, maybe we need to audit these guys. Maybe we need to move them from the low criticality to medium or high, and examine them more often, and look at the data we have there more often. Because if you weren't paying attention to that, now you are, right? So kind of keeping this in mind is really, really important. Germany takes down Hydra, the world's largest darknet market. The service of Hydra Market, which is the most prominent Russian darknet platform for selling drugs, money laundering, has been seized by the German police. The police were also able to seize 543 bitcoins from the profits of Hydra, which are currently worth a little over $25 million. The confiscated money indicates the size of the Hydra market, which counted around 19,000 registered seller accounts that served at least 17 million customers around the world. In an announcement today, the Central Office for Combating Cybercrime and the Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office estimated that the Hydra market had a turnover of 1.35 billion in 2020, making it the largest darknet market in the world. The investigation into an obscured space as well. Germany continues to look for international enforcement of Hydra, so something to keep an eye on. Let's move to China. We're hearing a lot about Russia, but folks, do not fall asleep on the Chinese. That's what they want. China has tried to stay neutral in this because they want you focused on Russia. They don't want you to talk about China, because China is still accomplishing what it needs to do. And while everyone's looking at Russia and the atrocities that are going on in Ukraine, nonetheless, we're not dismissing those. Do not fall asleep on China. So APT-10, also known as Stone Panda, is on the move again, typically targeting Japanese entities. Now, their new campaigns, which is called CISA, includes government, legal, religious, and NGOs in multiple countries across the world, including Europe, Asia, and North America. The new report says there's a strong focus on victims in the government and NGO sectors, with some of these organizations working in the areas of religion and education. Again, China looks at these religious organizations as a threat to their global pressure, to their global, expansion and influence. They see religion, and specifically NGO organizations and education, as being critical to how they flip. We've seen them do that in different parts of the world where they've changed history. They've omitted things. They don't allow people to speak freely. Many of the targeted organizations were located inside the US, Canada, Hong Kong, Turkey, Israel, India, Montenegro, and Italy. Take all of those in common. Those are very, very places with freedom of religion and education. So they're targeting also, there's victims in telecom, legal, pharmaceuticals, and governmental and NGOs as well. In March of 2021, conspiracy researchers took the wraps off of another intelligence gathering operation by APT-10. So keep your eyes out for their activities. If you're in this field, any sort of activity like that should be strictly monitored. And finally, the State Department launches a new cyber bureau. So the new bureau is called Cyberspace and Digital Policy. This has existed actually. There was an undersecretary under Secretary Pompeo in the previous administration that was doing this. This has now become an official bureau of the State Department. That's what's difference here. Well, that's the difference here, to bolster digital diplomacy and online standards across the world. Jennifer Backus, a career diplomat who was most recently a senior official at the U.S. Embassy in the Czech Republic, will lead as the principal deputy assistant secretary until President Biden nominates a permanent chief who will hold the rank of ambassador at large. Secretary of State Blinken gave a speech behind closed doors to mark the bureau's launch, and it was attended by CISA Chief Jen Easterly, and this is kind of the combination of this. This formally started under the Trump administration with Rex Tillerson, who actually demoted the department's cyber office, and then Pompeo tried to revive the mission and had actually someone on there that was working, but it wasn't a bureau. This is now a fully funded bureau with $37 million budget for the next calendar year, folks. That's it for our show today. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening